Here we got the daily candle 1-year chart for CEMi, Chem Biodiagnostic Inc. Clear downtrend since December 2020. A lot of big spikes, but continuously selling out to this downtrend. I want to note that when we look at this 2-year chart, this was a former parabolic runner when the COVID plays were going. This ran from 250 to over 15. So this is going to add extra FOMO every time it hits scanners to the day traders to remember this ticker. So that could have caused this volume as well. This sector was hot. There was a lot of recent plays like NURO that were running in the low float bio sector. So we'll talk about what caused this, because this is a real interesting play we have at hand. They announced a $60 million at the market offering on a Friday afternoon. So the following Monday is what we're seeing here, is when it broke this downtrend from the 240 range, closed at 209. So these prior days, it was trading only 200, around 400,000 shares a day. After this new offering was announced, it traded 1.4 million shares. So shorts jumped over it. They thought it was an easy short. After this offering was announced, who's going to buy it, as well as the dilution that's coming into play, as well as someone knew it was coming because this was too well timed, and they swooped up cheap shares, no doubt, because they throw a curveball on the bears, and they announced a 28.3 million purchase order for their anti-gen tests in Brazil. But better yet, they don't even announce this during pre-market or during the market or even after hours. They announce it after hours, completely catching the shorts with their pants down and forcing them to cover the following day, probably in a rush in pre-market, because I've seen the ass open up at pre-market around 240, jump right over 3 in a couple minutes, and the volume took over from there. So let's talk about the volume. They traded 395 million shares on this news. Then the next day, sold off a little bit, but held up with 150 million shares. And the day before I'm making this video, on the Friday, it had sold off only on 24 million shares, down to this 50 CEMi. But better yet, anyone that held this short right here, thinking that it could have gapped right back down, got caught with this news too. The next day, on July 22nd, they announced a $4 million HIV test purchase order from the Global Fund. So this is interesting. This is $32 million in future revenue and orders they're announcing. And before all the at the market offering play comes to hand, when we look at their 10Ks and 10Qs, they have 20.2 million shares. So when it was $2.40, this was under 50 million market cap. They're announcing $32 million of future revenue and orders. So this is an interesting play. So let's look at a broad view of their fundamentals, because I've seen people saying they're losing more money. All these opportunities, and they're losing more money the last couple of years. But here's what I've seen. Their 20.8 revenue in 2019 compared to their 24.7 or 24.8 if we round up in 2020. So less, but not much, during the pandemic. But they lost $10 million more, 13.3 compared to 23.1 million in net loss. Or no, 14 to 25 million, so 12 million loss. Around there. So when we look at what that was from, it's a little bit better, because we see in 2019 they spent 27.8 million in acquisitions, but in 2020 they spent 25.6 million. So a lot of this, there's a extra loss and net loss was in acquisitions. So hopefully in future situations it's going to provide revenue, right? So let's look back at their most recent cash on their latest 10Q. So as of March 31st, they had $14.3 million in cash. So they have this $60 million common stock offering. They're not stupid. They knew this was coming, so they didn't start selling them in this market at 220, which would have been, $27 million of dilution. They no doubt caught these shorts, caused a squeeze, attracted people with this news, and offered into this day of 495 and the next day of 150 million. They could have done that offering so easily at very high prices. So, offering's never going to be good from a bull's perspective, but this is probably one of the best time offering I've ever seen. Bad news, catch shorts. Next day, catch them with the good news when they can't respond, and then drop another one the next day. So very interesting play. So if they did the offering, here's what I'm thinking is if they did the offering, let's look at the 3-day chart real quick. At the VWAP. Actually, this make it less complicated. I got like resistance levels on that one. If they did the offering, well, the VWAP was around here. This is so much volume was traded, or at least on the way up. And they did the average offering around $4. That's 15 million shares of dilution if they did the full $60 million worth. But let's give them credit and say they did it around 550. That's around 11 million shares. And if they did it at 6, which they could have done with this volume, you see these big candles, that had only been 10 million shares. So if they could get 60 million, so if they're going to report this next earnings, I don't expect these orders to be on them. I think it will probably be on future earnings after that. It'd be nice if it was, but I'm expecting that their cash could be all the way up. They are losing money, so we can't add 60 million to this 14 million we see. There's going to be some burn rate, so minus whatever they're losing plus this potential 60 million, and we'll be able to see compared to their 20.2 million shares they have how much, at what price nearly they offered it up at. So it'll be very interesting on his earnings to see how high they got these shares off. The higher the better, because then they have more on this shelf. They did their shelf. They did this offering on this 100 million share shelf, so they still got $40 million on this shelf. So that's one of the negatives in the future going forwards, but I think they have enough. They wouldn't kill this momentum with another one right away, especially with this $60 million of cash they just got. So let's look over there, the 13Fs and the institutional holders of this stock. So the top ones, I just went by the ascending order of the share count. We got BlackRock and then Vanguard. So huge companies, 1.2 million plus, and then over 900,000 shares. So usually when you're thinking of those bigger companies in a stock with a market cap under 50 million, that's a very interesting situation. You don't see that every day on each of these penny stocks like that. Its stock has never had a split. Never had a split in its whole history. So when we're looking at the chart, we're not looking at split adjusted prices on the chart. And if you had initially put 10,000 in this stock, you'd now have 68,000 nearly. So that's rare to see on a small cap stock too. So another interesting thing I seen on their 10K, that amended 10K, they have a list of their beneficial owners 5%. And since the 13Fs only are institutional holders, they're the only ones that have to do the 13Fs. We see an interesting one here is Norman H Pessen. He owns 6.8% at the time, 1.3 million plus shares. And when I look him up, it's an interesting situation. It says he's a private investor. He's responsible for syndicate underwriting, prime brokerage, correspondent clearing, and NASDAQ market making. He also served on the board of governors of the National Association of Security Dealers and was a director of the NASDAQ stock market. So when you see guys like that holding positions that big, as well as Vanguard and BlackRock, there's something at play and big money behind this. And this is just way too well timed not to have someone that stole shares when it was cheap down there. Just perfectly timed offering, and it's going to be interesting to see where we go coming forwards, because here we are after this big move. We're in a clear downtrend. Broke under 3 briefly, but held back over it eventually on Friday. And let's talk over the key resistance and future support levels. So this 3 is going to be important. Can we hold this 3? And it got kind of heavy around 315. So 315 could be a range. It needs to break over 315, and as soon as it does, I think it could go right back to 350. Over 350, it's pretty light till about $4. Then about $4.20. Then $4.60. Then $5. Then $5.35. I put $5.70. $6.20. Then around 6, I'll say, I'm going to move that down actually, $6.60. So repeat them all. $3, $3.15, that's going to be a heavy little range that could get channeled in between. But over $3.15, $3.50, $4, $4.20, $4.60, $5, $5.35, $5.70, $6.20, and then $6.60. Those points are all going to be levels. They're going to be heavy where I'd lock profits under. Once it passes over, I'd use stop losses on them, or I'd sell if it can't get over them. It has points of resistance, and if it breaks over, look for them to be support. So it's also worth noting, I thought this was interesting. So these are the levels I found that I wrote, that I based off of this price action in the last 3 days. And then I wrote them on this list. And then I came and I put them on the same levels on the 200-day daily candle charts. So check it out. $3, $3.15, $3.50, $4, $4.20, $4.60, $5. All the levels I said, and here we see why those levels were heavy levels in this, on this recent move, on this past chart. So we would have to go further to see on this, on the 3 and the 315. But on the 360, I mean the 350, look at this right here and right here. $4. It's the support here. The support here is followed by the resistance here. $4.60. It's the support here, as well as the support here. $5. It's the resistance here, as well as probably right here. $5.70. It's right here, the resistance here, as well as the resistance on top of this spike. So I'm just pointing, that's where the resistance and the support came on this recent price action. When we're looking at the last week's action, it's actually been built on this last 200 days. So it hits these levels and these people are waiting to get out. That's why it's heavy.